Summers in the Middle Ages were long, bright, and blistering. Without fans or cold air, people still managed to stay cool using clever methods that helped them endure the heat day after day. When the temperature rose, peasants had no way to summon a breeze except through patience and planning. So they changed not only their routines, but the very rhythm of their lives. Their morning wake-up call came courtesy of the village rooster, nature's most persistent alarm clock. During the hottest months, people woke shockingly early, around 4 or 5 in the morning, when the air was still gentle and damp from night. The sun had not yet turned the fields into shimmering ovens, and for a few short hours, the world felt breathable. If waking up for an 8 o'clock job sounds rough, try 4 in the morning with no coffee in sight. But rising early was essential. The toughest work, plowing, weeding, harvesting, had to be finished before the sun began to rage. Working under the midday blaze wasn't just difficult, it was dangerous. Toiling in 110-degree heat meant flirting with collapse. In modern farming studies, traditional communities still manage to complete most of their hardest labor before mid-morning during intense summer heat. By late morning, everything slowed down. Around 11, the day reached its boiling point, and with it came an enforced rest period. Today, people might call it a siesta. In medieval villages, it was known simply as the time to avoid dying from heat. From late morning to early afternoon, fields stood empty while workers fled for shade. This wasn't laziness. It was smart survival. Peasants sought shelter in the coolest corners of homes, under trees, or beside rivers and wells. Finding good shade was the medieval version of turning on the air conditioner, though you had to keep moving to stay beneath it. During these quiet hours, women spun wool or prepared light meals, men repaired tools or wove baskets, and children fetched water, a chore that at least came with the bonus of standing near something cool. Generations of experience had given peasants a perfect sense of the day's temperature rhythm. They knew without instruments when to pause and when to return. There was no need for weather forecasts. Everyone understood the sky through instinct and survival. Around mid-afternoon, when the heat finally began to fade, people ventured back to work for a lighter round of duties. This second shift often meant feeding animals, collecting eggs, or cooking supper. The schedule was not just a local custom, but a shared habit across many lands. From Spain to Hungary, similar routines appeared wherever the summers burned hottest. When the light faded, people went to sleep early, knowing another dawn of labor waited just hours away. There were no late-night entertainments, just the quiet of exhaustion and the distant hum of crickets. But shifting the day's routine wasn't the only trick peasants had up their sleeves. When the heat refused to let up, they relied on one more powerful ally, the ground itself. Earth became their cooling system through the use of dugouts and cellars, underground rooms that acted as natural refrigerators. These places lacked luxury but excelled in comfort. Imagine the earliest version of a basement hangout, minus all the modern furniture. A dugout was exactly what its name suggested, a hollowed-out space in the soil, often carved into the side of a hill. These earth-sheltered chambers held a steady temperature all year, typically around 55 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Even when the air outside shimmered above 100, the cool underground stayed constant. 6 feet beneath the surface, the Earth's temperature barely changed, no matter what storms or heat waves raged above. Modern researchers have confirmed how effective such spaces were. Traditional underground homes can remain up to 30 degrees cooler than the outside air without a single machine. Stepping into a medieval cellar on a blistering day would have felt like walking into a grocery store, chilled by invisible magic, only without the awkward social encounters. Building these underground refuges took effort and skill. Workers dug carefully into hillsides or down through level earth, lining the walls with stone, packed clay, or hardened soil for stability. Overhead beams supported the ceiling, sometimes layered with moss, straw, or additional dirt to trap cool air inside. The entrances were positioned to face north whenever possible, avoiding direct sunlight. Some clever builders even added small openings or air shafts to allow for faint but constant ventilation without letting in the heat. Through these resourceful methods, shifting their schedules, chasing shadows, and hiding underground, medieval peasants endured the summer's fury long before science offered mechanical cooling. Their creativity turned bare survival into an art form, proving that even without modern comfort, human beings could outsmart the sun. Although storing food was their main reason for existing, during periods of extreme heat, these underground chambers often became genuine lifesavers. Families would retreat to their root cellar during the hottest parts of the day. Children were frequently asked to fetch something from below, a task that suddenly had more volunteers than ever in July and August. Many medieval houses also featured partially underground designs, with floors dug several feet beneath the surface. In areas that experienced severe heat, some homes were intentionally built into the ground itself. These earth-covered dwellings remained noticeably cooler in summer and warmer in winter, serving as one of the earliest forms of climate control. The difference in temperature could be striking. On days when the outside air reached 110 degrees, the dugout might remain a comfortable 60, a 50-degree contrast achieved without using a single watt of power. Medieval home cellars would have had some unusual talking points. This fine dugout offers natural cooling, ideal vegetable storage, and convenient access to your family pig pen just steps away. Archaeologists have uncovered examples of these cooling spaces throughout Europe, particularly in the Mediterranean, where summer heat could be relentless. Some of these old dugouts even contained channels that carried water through or near the structure, using evaporation to cool the air further. While underground shelters kept people alive in scorching weather, not every situation allowed them to hide below the earth. People also needed ways to keep cool above ground. Medieval peasants could not slip into shorts and t-shirts when the heat rose, but their clothing choices were surprisingly practical for staying cool. The secret lay in their fabric of choice, linen. This remarkable textile, made from the flax plant, was the medieval version of modern moisture-wicking fabric. Nearly every peasant owned at least one linen undergarment, a shirt for men or a chemise for women. These inner layers served an essential role. They absorbed sweat and allowed it to dry slowly, creating a cooling effect right against the skin. When it came to dressing for the heat, peasants mastered the combination of simple practicality and comfort centuries before anyone else. Linen proved to be an excellent fabric for enduring high temperatures. Studies of traditional linen garments show they can feel up to 7 degrees cooler than cotton and as much as 15 degrees cooler than polyester in direct sunlight. The natural fibers draw moisture away from the body, keeping wearers comfortable. Over these linen undergarments, peasants usually wore loose-fitting outer clothes, often made of lightweight wool. Before you imagine heavy winter coats, it is worth noting that not all wool was thick or heavy. The type used in summer was thin, loosely woven, and allowed air to pass through easily. The relaxed fit of these garments was intentional, designed to let air move freely between fabric and skin. The clever design of medieval summer clothing meant that most of the body remained covered. Long sleeves and full skirts protected the skin from harsh sunlight while still letting sweat evaporate. In regions where the summers were most intense, people wore mostly white or light-colored fabrics that reflected sunlight rather than absorbing it. Headwear also played an important role in staying cool. Women often covered their heads with light linen veils or simple caps, while men wore straw hats or fabric caps with brims. Medieval peasants clearly understood what modern skin experts continue to recommend, that a hat is better protection than any bottle of sunscreen, especially when your only alternatives were olive oil or nothing at all. Footwear followed similar logic. When possible, peasants went barefoot during the warmest days, allowing the cool earth or stone floors to draw heat away from their bodies. For tasks that required footwear, they wore thin leather sandals or shoes with small openings that allowed air circulation. By layering multiple light garments that could be removed or adjusted during the day, peasants could manage their comfort as both temperature and activity changed. This layered way of dressing is something modern hikers and outdoor workers still rely on to handle changing temperatures. Picture a medieval trendsetter saying, "Today's warm weather look features my favorite double-washed linen chemise, matched with my artisanally loose woven wool gown." Be sure to subscribe to my illuminated scroll for more timeless summer hacks. Medieval clothing choices showed impressive creativity when it came to staying cool. But fabric and fashion were only one part of the larger challenge of surviving summer heat. When the temperature climbed to unbearable levels, peasants turned to several other smart techniques that made all the difference. Beyond shifting work hours, hiding in dugouts, and layering light clothing, medieval villagers developed everyday habits that helped their bodies stay cool even in the worst heat. These tricks required no fancy tools, just a solid understanding of how the body reacts to temperature. One of the simplest but most effective habits was controlling physical movement. During the hottest hours, peasants deliberately slowed down. Fast movements generate heat inside the body, while moving at an easy pace can lower heat production by nearly 1/3. You could easily spot newcomers in a village during a heat wave. They were the ones rushing around while experienced locals moved with slow, steady motions, like they were walking through honey. The places peasants chose to sit were just as important as their movements. They often rested on cool surfaces, such as stone floors, packed soil, or clay tiles. Direct contact with these materials allowed their body heat to flow out through conduction, which works much faster than simply cooling through air. For instant relief, people used damp cloths on key pulse points, especially the wrists, neck, and temples. Modern research confirms that cooling these areas is highly effective. A wet cloth placed on the neck can lower core body temperature by nearly 1 degree within minutes. A medieval mother pressing a damp rag on her child's wrist during a hot day was basically using the same science as modern cooling wristbands, only without the fancy branding. Medieval people also knew the value of shade. They memorized routes through villages that offered the most shelter from the sun. Walkways between buildings, under wide roofs, or beneath trees became popular paths during blazing afternoons. Breathing also played a small but meaningful part. Workers often focused on breathing through the nose rather than the mouth in hot conditions. Nasal breathing helps moisten and cool the air before it reaches the lungs, making it easier to stay comfortable. Going barefoot was another common way to cool off. Direct contact with soil or stone helped draw heat from the body, and it also freed them from the warmth trapped inside shoes. For those who had to wear footwear for work, light sandals were taken off whenever they rested. Villages even had local knowledge about the best cool spots. Some locations were known to stay comfortable all summer, often near underground water sources or in areas that caught consistent breezes. These places became social gathering points, the real cool spots of the community, both literally and figuratively. All these small practices combined into a complete system of body cooling that needed no special equipment, only careful observation and shared wisdom. Medieval peasants might not have understood the science behind their habits, but centuries of experience had taught them exactly what worked. These physical strategies were just one part of how people stayed cool. Beyond slowing down and finding shade, peasants had additional tricks up their sleeves involving what they ate and drank. Food and drink could influence how hot or cool a person felt, and medieval villagers knew this very well. Their choices during a heat wave were not random. They were based on how certain foods affected the body's warmth and hydration. Let's begin with their drinks, since staying hydrated was just as vital then as it is now. Of course, peasants could not reach for a chilled drink from a refrigerator. Instead, they turned to creative and refreshing alternatives. One of their favorite warm weather beverages across Europe was small beer, a light, mildly fermented drink that kept them hydrated and cool. Do not be fooled by the name. Small beer was not the strong drink that left people stumbling home. It was a very mild beverage, usually containing less than 1% alcohol, brewed quickly and consumed while still fresh. During hot months, it was stored in underground cellars or lowered into deep wells to keep it cool. The light fermentation made it safer than drinking plain water from uncertain sources, and the low alcohol content meant it refreshed rather than dried out the body. In many ways, medieval small beer was the ancestor of today's sports drinks, just without the bright colors or the athletes on posters. Another popular refreshment was posca, a mix of water, vinegar, and herbs such as mint or sage. This ancient drink dated back to Roman times and stayed common throughout the medieval era. The vinegar's acidity stopped bacteria from growing, making it safer to drink than untreated water, while its tangy taste produced a pleasant cooling effect on the tongue. Studies of traditional beverages show that diluted vinegar mixtures can give a cooling feeling that lasts up to 15 minutes after drinking. Peasants sometimes collected morning dew to drink, a surprisingly clever idea. Water gathered from leaves just before sunrise was naturally cool and cleaner than stagnant pools or wells. Children often handled this task, walking through fields at dawn with cloths to wipe dew from broad leaves, and then squeezing the moisture into containers. For families near clean water, people would submerge sealed clay jugs in flowing streams to chill their contents naturally, keeping the water 10 to 15 degrees cooler than the surrounding air. Clay jars also helped with cooling through evaporation. As tiny amounts of moisture seeped through the porous surface and evaporated outside, the water inside stayed cold. When it came to meals, peasants naturally preferred foods that helped lower body temperature. They avoided using cooking fires during the hottest hours, since that would turn their homes into ovens. Instead, they cooked early in the morning when the air was still cool, preparing meals that could be eaten later at room temperature. Chilled soups made with blended vegetables, leftover bread, and fresh herbs were common summer fare. These dishes were not only practical, but genuinely cooling. Cucumber, sorrel, and borage were among the most popular ingredients, valued for their cooling qualities. Medieval medical writings often praised such plants for reducing internal heat, and modern science confirms that these foods contain compounds that create a cooling sensation. The medieval version of a quick meal was a bowl of cold potage that had been waiting all day on the table. No reheating was necessary. It was already at the perfect temperature to eat without raising anyone's body heat. Preservation practices also changed with the weather. Summer cheeses were made smaller and aged for shorter periods than winter ones, needing less salt and keeping more moisture, which made them better suited for hydration. Fruits such as berries and early apples were crushed and strained, then blended with vinegar or whey to create refreshing drinks that could last several days without spoiling. Spices, too, played a role in staying cool. While many people today associate spices with heat, medieval cooks used certain herbs specifically for their cooling effects. Mint was the top choice, added to drinks, sweets, and salads during hot weather. They also used fennel seeds, coriander, and rosewater, all believed to cool the stomach, according to period medical writings. Herb gardens served as pharmacies, kitchens, and climate control systems all in one. Meal timing shifted during the hottest months as well. The largest meal of the day was eaten very early in the morning or after sunset, when the air was bearable. During midday, people preferred lighter meals rich in moisture and easy to digest, because they had learned that heavy digestion increased body heat. Food and drink were just one side of their heat survival strategy. Peasants had additional methods for staying comfortable when the temperature became unbearable. Water was medieval, Europe's most precious cooling tool, second only to shade. Although running water was not available everywhere, peasants discovered ingenious ways to use what they had. The simplest approach was also the most effective: to get wet. During scorching days, people would wade into ponds, rivers, or shallow streams to cool themselves, but with a custom that might surprise modern swimmers. They often kept their clothing on. This was not because of modesty, but for extended relief from the heat. Wet clothing held moisture longer, allowing slow evaporation that kept the body cool for hours, even after stepping back into the sun. It was a simple but brilliant trick that made the difference between suffering and surviving a medieval heat wave. Damp clothing, particularly linen, continued to provide cooling through evaporation long after leaving the water. Chronicles from several medieval heat waves describe entire villages spending the hottest hours of the day partly submerged in nearby rivers or ponds. In areas without easy access to natural water sources, communities sometimes dug shared cooling pools specifically for summer relief. These simple basins, usually sealed with clay, gathered rainwater or channeled stream water for cooling purposes. Medieval swimming lessons were rather uncomplicated. Step 1, find water. Step 2, get in. Congratulations, you are now a swimmer. Just try to stay afloat. For workers who could not abandon their duties to swim, quick dips of the head or feet offered instant relief. The head, hands, and feet lose heat faster than other parts of the body because of their dense network of blood vessels near the skin. Laborers often kept a bucket of water nearby, solely for brief immersions of hands or feet during the hottest part of the day. Wet fabrics were another widespread cooling aid. Tests of traditional techniques reveal that placing a damp cloth on the back of the neck can make the body feel up to 8 degrees cooler. Medieval peasants would drape soaked cloths around their necks or over their heads, re-wetting them whenever they dried out. Drawing water from deep wells served a similar cooling purpose with added advantages. Water taken from depths of 30 feet or more stays at a steady cool temperature of about 55 degrees all year. This water was both refreshing to drink and useful for cooling the containers that carried it. Being sent to fetch water during a medieval heat wave was considered a lucky job. Oh no, another trip to the shaded well, what a terrible fate. Home cooling also relied heavily on water. One common method involved hanging damp cloths across windows and doorways. As breezes passed through the moist fabric, the air was cooled by evaporation. This basic form of air cooling could lower indoor temperatures by several degrees in dry areas. Clay vessels helped as well. Unglazed clay jars allowed tiny amounts of water to seep through and evaporate on the surface, chilling the remaining liquid inside. These containers were often placed around the house to create cooler spots within the living space. In hotter regions, some medieval homes even included small architectural water features. Shallow channels might run along the edge of a main room, slightly cooling the air through evaporation. In wealthier homes, these channels sometimes connected to an outdoor stream or fountain, maintaining a constant flow of cool water. Floors were sprinkled with water several times each day during extreme heat, allowing evaporation to provide extra cooling. Sleeping mats were occasionally moistened before use, just enough to cool the body without feeling soaked. In communal areas, shade and water worked together to offer respite from the heat. Large trees providing thick shade often became the chosen locations for public wells or storage cisterns, forming naturally cooler gathering places. For outdoor labor that could not be postponed, workers sometimes used water-soaked canopies to provide both shade and moisture-based cooling. Cooling and pest control were occasionally combined in one task. The same water poured on floors to reduce heat also suppressed dust and discouraged insects from breeding. A practical 2-for-1 benefit. Medieval water cooling practices were not only inventive but impressively efficient. Modern tests of these ancient methods demonstrate that they can lower perceived temperature by 15 degrees or more in hot, dry climates. When combined with all the other strategies, these water-based approaches made enduring severe heat possible even without modern tools. The medieval survival system for coping with high temperatures was well-rounded and effective. From early morning work schedules to underground retreats, from specially woven garments to body-cooling tricks, from diet adjustments to the imaginative use of water, medieval people had created a complete and time-tested strategy for surviving the fiercest heat.